So welcome back, friends. Today I am really happy and privileged to welcome, my old-time friend and a senior associate from the pharma industry, Dr. Christian Dohms. Dr. Christian Dohms is a seasoned. Welcome, Christian.
Hi there.
Good to have you. So, Dr. Christian Dohms, I have been, knowing him for many years. He has been working in this industry for over 2 decades. He has been working with various pharma, but he has been doing mostly now consulting, strategic advisory for CDMO. He's based out of Germany, Dusseldorf. His experience spans more than 25 years, and to me he has been always there whenever I have needed any help with CDMO. And of course, he has worked for Sumitomo Corporation, for Innova, and more recently at Pathian Thermo Fisher, covering various aspects of pharmaceutical supply chain. Christian holds a PhD degree in organic chemistry, and he's a trained sales manager and coach. I met him recently at Vitafoods Geneva. So welcome, to this conference, Christian. We are privileged and grateful to have you here. And today's topic will be post-COVID new age for CDMO. Over to you, Christian.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the kind introduction, Kuntal and Mario. So it's all about CDMO today, which is Contract Development and Manufacturing Organization, which is the main outsourcing arm of the pharmaceutical industry. I've been working in this segment for a little bit more than 20 years, as Kuntal said. I praise myself a little bit because I have been working both on the pharmaceutical manufacturing side, but also on the side of where the drug substances are being made and where the starting materials for the drug substances are being made and marketed. So I have been seeing a couple of sides of our industry, and always worked on the operative level and on the operative side, and have pulled all this experience together into a more consultant type activity over the last 4 years. So you may have noted I have changed the title slightly. I think when I started thinking of this and collecting ideas for this presentation, I recognized how big the change is due to COVID and post-COVID. And I believe I have a strong impression that we will be seeing lots of changes also in business models in the CDMO industry going forward. So I was bold enough to call it a new age, maybe with a question mark. So why are we sitting here thinking about these things? Why are we thinking about these things? It's of course the global pandemic that has turned everything upside down. And yes, pharmaceutical industry has in parts not been as badly affected as other industries. But in the, let's say, in the second tier, third tier parts of the pharmaceutical industry, especially in the medium-sized companies, especially also in the manufacturing companies that that are service providers, lots of things have happened and lots of impacts have taken grounds that are not good, that have still to be overcome. So let's have a look at that, and maybe we can come to a new understanding of our industry doing that. Well, contract manufacturing for the pharma industry has always been challenging from times, because you are in manufacturing, which means in manufacturing things can go wrong. Time plans are typically falling over when unexpected things happen. So we have seen in the past, sometimes we had delays, we had frustrated clients, we had sometimes the clients trying to run away and find another supplier. But at the end, and the bottom line was, the CDMO was able to earn some money with what they were doing. And the owners of the CDMOs and also the larger owners and the consolidation in that segment have basically been able to earn money, also in the smaller organizations. I've been working on the interface with people like Kuntal and Mario Schäfer for a couple of years, who are the license BD managers, and we all know what we want to license out, we have to manufacture somewhere, and that's getting a bit more difficult now. Patients' needs are still there also after COVID and during COVID. So what I've done to come up with, let's say, some insights is my own experience of the last 6 to 12 months. And I also carried out a couple of interviews with CDMOs and participants in the CDMO space to see what they have seen. This is interesting. I found it this week in a newspaper, in a report of the pharmaceutical industry. It looks at it's a survey in outsourcing procurement managers, and they were comparing. It's the ISR report. It's the US magazine. They were comparing what the outsourcers are feeling, and they are seeing complications. And what has been compared here is in blue last year, and in green the year 2020. And they have been comparing biological drug product manufacturing, outsourcing, and contract manufacturing, and the atmosphere or the mood in the small molecule drug product manufacturing. So it's basically new biologics and generics, what they have been comparing. And you see that the manufacturing complications, which is something we've been seeing, as I said already, always seen, have gone up considerably. And interestingly, the small molecule products have been, and the generics therefore, have been affected more heavily than the biologics. So there's unease, and this will impact, and there's a lot of writing ongoing and discussion ongoing already. This will impact also the behavior of the pharma companies when they come outsourcing, because they will be looking for more safety, more reliability. They will be putting certain clauses in their contracts that does not leave any room for not being on time. And that will cost the smaller CDMOs a lot of money to still participate in that race, I believe. So this is a pretty crowded slide. I have just dumped here what I have seen, what's going wrong, well, in day-to-day business. So we have issues with energy costs, for example. We are going back into our long-term supply contracts to add clauses that give us the room to reflect energy costs, rising energy costs in our drug product contracts with our clients. This is the CDMO perspective, okay? But in new projects where we do transfers and where we start generic development, or even just we take on a manufacturing project, we have seen so many difficulties in material lead times. We have been not able to buy simple glass vials, or even more complicated products they are also rare and have lead times of 1 year and longer. Carton boxes, analytical columns, simple, you would think, sterile filters, which you need to bring in an aseptic fill, you cannot no longer buy them. You may probably still be able to buy them if you are a big CDMO. Certainly, if you are a big pharma, you may still be able to get them with some reasonable lead time. However, the smaller and medium-sized CDMOs, they are not given priority anymore in COVID times when vaccines are being made or other very essential medications. Then all these supplies go to the most important products. In biological manufacturing, I've seen single-use materials being short, long lead times, projects being stopped because they cannot be provided. On the raw material side of things, API prices, mainly from India, have gone up to 25% case by case. We have much longer lead times on chemical raw materials for manufacturing chemicals, for manufacturing APIs in Europe. We are trying to circumvent that by getting a new Asian suppliers qualified, but very often that is then hampered by REACH regulations, by limitations in European regulations, which have always been there, but due to COVID, they become much more painful. So we have delays in validations because we have to use new materials. We have hesitated to qualify new suppliers because the risk and the cost to go to a new supplier who can overcome a shortage of an existing material is uncalculable for senior management very often. We have been asked by our suppliers for upfront payments, which is something which basically also turns the whole cash flow and payment term set up, which we have in our contract with our clients, bottom up, because we all of a sudden we have to finance rather than just collecting money. It's a big paradigm shift, this one. And very simple things like DHL not being able to ship because they are busy, and large political things like the US for some time in 2020, in 21, they had blocked all exports of relevant pharma materials to outside the US, which gave down delays to certain projects over here. As I said, there are contractual issues that come with this, and not least, it's about people, it's about humans, because when we have not enough people that can do the manufacturing, that can do the analytical work in the lab, because they are on sick leave, or not on sick leave, but they have been tested positive and they stay at home for 10 days, then you simply have not enough people to run your daily business. So apparently, and very interestingly, it's also some non-COVID related limitations have started to become very critical. And this is just a list I made within an hour, and after a couple of interviews. So if we would sit down to do this with more time, you would probably come to much more examples, and you would understand how severe the situation really is. It's probably more severe than we even think it is. And one of the severity, or one of the reasons why this is so serious, I'm sorry, this slide was messed up a little bit, is the reason is that we have so many facets in the pharmaceutical industry, and the pharmaceutical industry itself is not monolithic. The pharmaceutical industry is a complex animal with very, very different activities. I tried to just highlight this a little bit. We have a large segment of drug products, which is basically what you can buy in the pharmacy or what you get in the hospital. But underlying, there's the ingredient of the drug product. That's a so-called drug substance. Somebody's making these drug substances, and that's a sub-segment of the pharmaceutical industry. Sometimes separate companies, sometimes the same companies, for sure also very often outsourced, and for sure also highly specialized companies, also very large companies being involved here, for example, with making monoclonal antibodies or vaccines. It's a very specific high-tech activity that cannot be carried out by many people and companies in this world. And then you have the new segment of the advanced therapies that include gene therapies, tissues, cells. That is a completely new segment. And now imagine just for a moment how many manufacturing steps, how many specific scientific knowledge and technologies are underlying under this large spectrum of pharmaceutical technologies. And you can just, it's difficult to imagine how much that is affected by supply chain difficulties. It's affecting, sooner or later, it's affecting everyone, and it's causing delays, it's causing higher costs, it's causing business models going down the drain, basically, on the midterm. So on the second part of this slide, I've just detailed it a little bit further just to confuse you. What it all is, and it's getting more complex if you look into how clinical trials are being run, set up, and organized. You also have to think of recruiting patients for clinical trials, and that was one of the biggest shortcomings during the COVID crisis. That many clinical trials couldn't be continued because of hospitals not being able to take patients anymore. This also goes into diagnostics and into all the whole food supplement sector, which is something that is basically functioning in a similar way, but also affected by COVID. So this is almost frightening, I think. I didn't mean to frighten you, but it's so complex and it's so affected. Some other aspects. It's completely clear it's an ethical consideration that in COVID treatments must have priority in supply chains. And that is what happened. So big pharma got priority, companies like Pfizer got priority, and they have been securing supplies of critical packaging materials, for example, for a very long time. So they have almost bought the whole annual production of certain supplies, with the result that lead times got extremely long for the normal mortals in the manufacturing space, like CDMOs. It also impacted the CDMOs because quite a few of them are medium-sized and small, so they don't have that big management resources. They lack know-how of how to manage risky or critical situations. They were working day and night to just manage the business somehow. And that's, of course, not a sustainable basis of running a business. You have to look at how you do your business rather than trying to survive yourself and your team. And a lot of small things come on top of this. We have, for example, when we get involved in new generics or licenses that come to us from another part of the world, where we should get involved in the manufacturing. There are so many additional costs that we have to tell the client that will be involved now, that haven't been involved before. That I reckon quite a good percentage of these small niche generics with good value will not survive because the costs of making them, of transferring them, are much higher than pre-COVID, And it takes much longer to bring them into the market than pre-COVID. Not in all cases, but in a good number of cases, it will be very difficult to launch generics in future. Then one thing that came also out that was a very interesting finding from the interviews I did was that many of the supplies that we use in the lab, that we use in manufacturing, for example, in sterile manufacturing, like bags or filters, pipes, are made in large Western companies and are controlled by a handful of very big companies. So if you want to find an alternative supplier, you can possibly be successful, for example, by going to China, because in China there are, for example, glass manufacturers that you can use that have good quality. However, you need to qualify them, and that easily takes a year until you've been over there, you have a report, you have built some relationships, some rapport, you have tested their materials, you have validated a new glass quality from an overseas supplier. Lots of impacts, lots of things that are facing us with food for thought, I would say. So what's the solution? I don't know the solution, but I think I can think of a few things that will certainly happen, although they will not happen to present us with a solution. They will simply probably just happen as a matter of fact, as a matter of survival of CDMO industry. And one thing I believe, or what I can already see, is that there will be a trade with manufacturing slots at the contract manufacturer in future. If you look into biologic manufacturing has already involved selling manufacturing slots. So, for example, next year you want to make a monoclonal antibody, you want to have it for a clinical trial or for something like that, and you would go out to a specialized contract manufacturer and get your hands on a manufacturing slot, or even a set of manufacturing slots at the next availability, which could well be next year or in 6 months or in 9 months. So but the clients, the pharma companies, would pay upfront to reserve these slots, which gives capital into the chain, and it gives the CDMO the chance to plan properly, because they know exactly next July I will have to make this product, which gives them a lot of time early on to plan for where do I get the materials from. Maybe it has to become 2 years in upfront, but it's already been practiced in the biologic space to sell manufacturing slots. Now, this practice is probably a good practice to be implemented also in the generics, in the normal pharmaceutical manufacturing space, CDMO space. Although many people will probably throw coffee cups at me if they hear me saying that, because they will say, hey, that's going to cost us a fortune, and the tender landscape is not allowing any higher costs. Yes, I know. And that is going to be a dilemma that we will probably all, as a society, will have to look at, because the public health system trying to bring the costs down, and at the same time the contract manufacturers having additional costs due to COVID, due to war, due to supply chain issues. That's not going to work in the midterm. So there needs to be much more capital somewhere in here, and maybe the prices for generics will have to go up. It will also change the mindset of some of these investors in the CDMO space. If they really can earn that high margins going forward that they've been all expecting, question mark. Another change that is already at the horizon is that, and it's not only at the horizon, it's happening, larger CDMOs are being formed, and a large CDMO with more than 10 or 20 sites globally has much more purchasing power, has much more supply chain capabilities. And one of the recent news that came through the press, I think this month, is that Novartis is now also becoming active as a CDMO, mainly in the gene therapy space, but also in the biologic space. And they offer the outside world, the other pharma companies, their supply chain muscle in order to help them manufacture. If that works for many of the market participants to go to Novartis to have their product manufactured there, I don't know, but at least what's absolutely clear and convincing is Novartis has a global power in buying vials and plastic supplies, for sure, much higher than a small or even a multi-sided, medium-sized CDMO. So that will be one way out of the dilemma. And distribution companies will be more important, because distribution companies can build stock of critical supplies in local warehouses, which costs a lot of money, by the way, for sure. Somebody has to pay for that. But then there would be a possible midterm possibility to not run so quickly short of industrial supplies. So if this is the press, the news about Novartis, and that's basically my presentation for today. I have a nice LinkedIn profile and website. So if you have any needs to get support interpreting or understanding new trends, or discussing how you set up your CDMO business in these turbulent times, I'm happy to have a discussion.
Thank you, Christian. I think it's wonderful. I also learned a lot. And I think we have some questions. We'll not let you go just like that. First of all, I think I fully agree. We all fully agree that the prices in generics should go up, because otherwise, the pharmaceutical industry is not part of the inflation process. All the industry is taking advantage of the inflation process. Inflation is no good. But how can a pharmaceutical maintain quality? If everything goes up and pharmaceutical prices doesn't go up, how can they maintain the quality? That's my biggest worry. How do you like to put forth this quality part? Because one part is supply chain, of course, and it's linked to quality. You have long-term supply chain arrangement, so it's a force. War is a force majeure. All other things are force majeure. So suddenly contract can be amended. There is a clause. But day-to-day life, in your experience, how do you see this trend coming? Is it like people are going for discussion in good faith, or there will be like increase in future? How do you see that? Because it's a very good point to mention.
You mean with regard to quality?
Yeah, quality and overall, like increase of prices, is it coming, or it will be a step-by-step process? How do you see that?
So at the moment, I don't see an increase in prices. This is not allowed. No. When our clients come with new projects, they are all price sensitive. Correct. They are price sensitive because their strategy, their marketing plan is based on at least being competitive to what is already in the market. So as long as the market prices don't go up, they will not allow any supplier to charge higher prices. What with regard to quality, I believe there must be. I mean, compromising on quality is not really an option for none of us, because we will kill the industry if we start doing that. And that it's also in the genes, and it's a moral obligation to obey quality rules. And I mean, it's not only a moral obligation, but show me who can escape quality audits or inspections by the local inspection bodies. Nobody can, and they are chasing everyone. So it's a relative tight net of controls in pharmaceutical manufacturing. But nevertheless, there are differences in Europe between the European countries, and possibly, I don't know, but possibly this is going to become more important, because if you are able to save some costs by manufacturing in a country that has a more relaxed pharmaceutical inspection, then you may be able to enjoy. You may be able to enjoy competitive advantages as a CDMO, possibly.
Possibly, yeah. No, I think, thank you for bringing that point. What I was mentioning, of course, this point that, pharmaceutical have to keep the quality. Of course, they cannot afford to manufacture at loss. So somehow there has to be a balance. And this balance, which of course comes with negotiation with government bodies, all kind of public affairs, coming in. But I think that's the future. One more question which was asked by Stefan de Kock, another professional, my friend from Thermo Fisher. So Stefan is asking how this tender business, like supply of generics and tender business, tender is even more fierce, in terms of quality and all that. What will be the supply reliability from your, like say experience? How do you see that coming? Because tender, of course, people are afraid of tender because price goes down. But currently, we feel that price will go up in tender because now it's like the best offer, with quality.
Good
Any
question.
comment?
I don't have an answer for what is going to happen in tender prices. I don't. But what I do see is that this will become more and more a corporate show, because the risk involved in supplying into a tender that you have won, if you do not have a real powerful supply and a very solid supply chain, then the risk this could kill you if you, or a penalty, or would kill you if you do not supply what you have promised to supply. The risk for a medium-sized company is probably now in post-COVID, it's too big.
Exactly. No, good. Thank you, Christian, for all your inputs. Thanks for the nice presentation.
You're very
And we look
welcome.
forward to having you in our future conferences. Thanks a
Thank
lot
you.
for your time, Christian.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
Kuntal.
Have a nice day. So we will